Hey, I hope you're having an awesome day today, awesome people. Today we're taking a look at the short story, The Insects from Shaggai. It is the fourth short story in the collection Cold Print by Ramsey Campbell that we're doing a deep dive into as part of our Cthulhu Mythos October. As a reminder, I dedicate my 3 reviews a week in the month of October to doing reviews of the Cthulhu Mythos. I started that when I'm in my first month, and now I'm continuing to do that. I'm actually reading this stuff in late September and doing a deep dive into it. I knocked out this 27-page 1964 short story last night in about an hour while I was taking my bath. I like to take a bath and read for like an hour each day. And this short story took me about that long. I'll link you to Cold Print in the comments below. Ramsey Campbell is a big name in the horror in the UK. He has published tons and tons of novels, and he's developed his craft. This is one of his first publications in the Cthulhu Mythos. Is where he started writing for, but he has really pushed his craft, and now his novels tend to mix a sense of awesomeness and wonder with a sense of horror. For example, I had this novel of his, Midnight Sun, that I read about 10 years ago and enjoyed it. Haven't reviewed it for this channel. I have reviewed 2 things for this channel prior to this deep dive into him: a horror short story and a collection of about 100 different short stories at about 500 pages long. So each one's about 5 pages long. They're very short. I did about 15 reviews from that book, and then I set it aside and moved to other things. I also have read a fantasy short story by him, the only fantasy thing I have read by him, and that was part of an Appendix N collection because it was published in the late 70s in one of the collections that were added to the Appendix N by Gary Gygax in his list of the most influential writers in Dungeons & Dragons and where he got his ideas from for the game. That was also commemorated. So he has a fantasy short story that's in Appendix N, in the Appendix N collection, that collects a lot of those works because it's in one of these later 70s collections. So that's cool too, and I also read that for this channel. But prior to that, and so forth. Now, the first short story that I read by Ramsey Campbell was in a Lovecraft collection of the Cthulhu Mythos when I was in college, and I really enjoyed it. It was the first short story in this collection that we've reviewed for you a couple of days ago in previous reviews for you. I definitely enjoyed it. So now I bought this collection about 16 years ago, and I've read it. Again, I'll link you to it in the comments below in case you're interested in checking out Cold Print. That's a bunch of Cthulhu Mythos collection works. This one has the Necronomicon in it. It also introduces an insect race from a far-flung planet that have moved to Earth and will run into them. And they're going to be one of the big bads of this short story. We're going to find out a lot about what this is happening. It definitely feels a little different than some other Cthulhu Mythos short stories by Campbell or by other people. It's longer in detail and world building in this specific world. It feels a little bit like The Shadow Out of Time by H.P. Lovecraft. It reminded me of that one where we're doing a deep dive into a race of creatures that don't look anything like terrestrial. They're traditionally extraterrestrial in nature that have colonized the Earth. So they are our prehistorical race of creatures that and then use body swap with them in order to do a deep dive into those folks. So that way, and you really have it's like 60-70 pages long, and it definitely does a deeper dive into what's happening with their culture and their society and who they are as a people. And the same thing happens here. You're probably spending like 15 pages of this 27-page short story in the history of this insect race from Shaggai. So it definitely reminded me of that. I'm giving this short story a 7- out of 10, which is what I've given the first 3. It probably is a few pages too long. It's heavy in description and light in plot, which you typically don't want for your shorter reads, like short stories. So it's it's a little different than normal Cthulhu Mythos stuff. And again, he's still trying to reiterate the Cthulhu stylings of Lovecraft rather than writing his own sort of path, his own way of getting there. So I don't like that. The endings here is fine. I don't dislike it as much as I dislike the endings from the first couple of short stories, which were still fine. They just aren't my preferred ending to a Mythos story like the first one. Which I think is a much better ending. And the ending here is fine too. Don't have any issues with it at all. But there you are. I'll go ahead and leave you to it. Have you read The Insects from Shaggai, 1964 short story by Ramsey Campbell that's set in the Cthulhu Mythos? If so, I would be more than happy to talk with you about it further in the comments below. Whatever your take is, whatever your rating is. If you want to talk about spoilers, again, I keep my reviews spoiler free. But I'll go ahead and do that for you in the comments below too. If you enjoyed this video, hey, why not hit that subscribe button? There's going to be a lot more of these to follow. And then finally, I want to thank you so much for taking some time out of your day and investing it in watching my video. We all have so many things that are happening in our lives, and we're pulled so many different directions. So the fact that you spent this time with me is incredibly humbling, and I appreciate it. So thanks again, and have an amazing day.